I'm Tony Selimo. You're listening to College Hill Perspectives. We just spoke to Lieutenant Mike Richards. He's chairing the Sussex County community at the college. We have the memorial event for 9/11. He is on the 9/11 committee, and he will be running the ceremony on Saturday. And also Barry Warman, who's the Corvette Car Club, and he runs the 9/11 Memorial Car Show. He will be at the event on Saturday. But one of the speakers coming up on Saturday's event is Ira Polk. Now, Ira is the director of the Clearing Corporation Foundation, which donated $125,000 to a business center that was constructed at the campus of Sussex County Community College. And he is also the director of the Ice Clear USA, centered right here in New York. And Ira, thanks for being with us today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's good to be with you again, Tony.
All right, Ira, tell us how, first of all, a bit about what you do with the Clearing Corporation Foundation and Ice Clear USA. Let's educate the audience a bit.
Sure. The foundation was established probably 20 or 30 years ago by the members of the Chicago Board of Trade. They're active in trading commodities on the floor of the exchange, and they wanted to give back to their local communities, and they established a foundation which has gone through many changes over the years, but its still core roots is to help communities and students who wanted to get into the futures trading, understand basic commodities. And one of the reasons that we gave to Sussex was because of its rural atmosphere. It still relies a lot on agriculture, and it was helpful to the students who couldn't afford in this economy to go away and go to other schools. This provided a business school environment. It's high tech. They now have a trading type facility, and it teaches them about current markets. ICE Trust is the ICE Clear is the clearing organization for the ICE Exchange in New York, which trades coffee, sugar, cocoa, and some of the indices. That was set up many years ago. It was originally known as the New York Board of Trade, and several years ago was taken over by ICE.
That's very interesting. Now, from that, let's talk about how you were involved. Actually, with the college, you got involved a bit because you came to the 9/11 memorial, right? The ceremony.
That's correct. I was in the World Trade Center in '93 when it was bombed, and I worked in the World Financial Center, which is directly across the street, in 9/11. I also, because of the nature of our business and the government's desire to keep the exchanges open, we stayed in ground zero, if you will, during the cleanup phase. I heard a fair amount about the school through some of their activities and what was reported in the local newspapers as to what they were doing about 9/11 and memorial programs that were being held. So I went down once and then started to go annually thereafter. I think several years ago they had an essay contest, which I thought was just a wonderful idea, and contributed to that program as well. So it's just been an important part of the relationship building between myself, the foundation, and the school, all originating out of the 9/11 event.
Ira, let's go back, since we're talking about the memorial 9 years later now, what you were doing, what it was like for you during that event, and certainly thereafter during the the rescue and recovery phase.
Okay. Obviously, it's always emotional to talk about, and we've heard a lot about the first responders and their heroic activities. What you don't hear many stories about are all of the people 9/11 who had to bring businesses back, had to work in the ground zero environment under extremely adverse conditions. We were not trained for it. We were not totally prepared for the magnitude of the disaster. We had to work, obviously, under adverse conditions. There was an inability to get supplies at ground zero. As I mentioned before, the government wanted the exchanges. It wanted to show the world that we were resilient and that we could bounce back. And as a result, they really pushed the exchanges to open as quickly as possible. The New York Mercantile Exchange is a world leader in the trading of oil.
Mm-hmm.
So their backup center was in for World Trade Center, which was also destroyed, even though it was on a separate electrical grid and everything else. So government said basically we had to be operational. The phones were destroyed, everything. If you think about complete rebuild of infrastructure, how difficult that can be within a short period of time.
Yeah, monumental task. And then, of course, it was a sudden event, so that there was nothing anyone can do or be prepared for anything like that at all.
That's right. There was some interesting developments because of what happened in '93, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll hear me say sometimes is that as large as the number of people were killed in 9/11, I truly believe that it was much lower than would have happened had we not gone through '93. After '93, there were a fair number of financial services firms, whether they were small, medium, or large, all got together and started to talk a lot about disaster recovery planning, not only on a regional basis, but on a global basis.
Right.
And we specifically drew upon some of the experiences that our English counterparts went through when we had the bombings in the UK years ago. As to what backup had to be, there was a big push to establish disaster recovery centers. We, my firm, for instance, had one in North Bergen area in New Jersey. So there was a lot of emphasis on coordination. How do you keep your people safe? And one of the most important things that evolved, especially from our perspective, was that you evacuate as quickly as possible, because we experienced in '93 what I called disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in the building, it's the other building, don't worry. Then the communications went down internally, so there was no direction at all. There were no lights into World Trade Center in the emergency stairwells. So our actions, and I think many of the people who were in the World Trade Center, was not to wait for instruction, evaluate the situation, and evacuate. In 9/11, for instance, we basically declared evacuation in the building right across from one World Trade Center within about 2 minutes. We were very familiar, obviously, with the layout of World Trade Center, having been there, having close proximity, worked in that building. I myself worked in that building for probably 20 years. So it was get out and get downstairs. And then it was get away.
Right.
That I believe did save a lot of lives.
So your building, you were at number 4. You all actually got out and evacuated and followed that plan.
In '93, we were in 2,
mm-hmm.
and we evacuated and got out. In 9/11, we were in One World Financial Center, which was the building right across the street from one,
mm-hmm.
which the plane went into first. We were probably 200 feet from the building.
Mm. And that was, and it took a little time for everyone to realize what was actually happening there, because it was across the street, right?
Well, you knew almost immediately that something happened. You could buildings all have huge amount of glass. There was a loud noise, and instantaneously people knew that something had happened. Now, we didn't know the details. And you have to remember is that even when we were down on the ground, we did not have any communications. The cell phones were down. Mm-hmm. BlackBerries were really the only form of communication that was working. And that's obviously why BlackBerry caught on these days and is right. in common use. But Verizon, AT&T, all of our normal cell phones were down. The Verizon building, which was right next to Ground Zero, was completely destroyed. The bottom basement and communications went down instantaneously.
Right, right. Yeah,
so we have to rely a lot on our instinct, our own pre-planning, and the whole concept of what we had talked about before with disaster recovery. Get away, get to your safe place, etc.
So that got enough people far enough away before the first collapse, right?
Yes, yes. If you could envision the evacuation of Dunkirk, with the ferries,
right?
That's exactly what it was like to a large degree. Those people who lived on the Jersey side who can get out, the ferry system was remarkable that day. They had boat after boat bringing people away to New Jersey, and then other people moved northward, basically on foot because everything else had ceased operating. So they were going on foot.
Right.
But mass majority of the people evacuated through the ferry mechanism.
Yeah, and that was, people watching on television would see that, the ferry system, as you said, all funneled together, many ferries down there to get people away from the lower Manhattan area.
Yeah. In my case, I was on one of the last ferries, and I got to Hoboken. Then the ferry, I got onto Path. Path was still running briefly, but it let me off at Journal Square, then stopped running. And I basically, I'm from that area, so I'm familiar with it. I started literally walking from Jersey City and ultimately hitchhike to get to Harrison, New Jersey, where my car was parked.
Oh, wow. And, you saw a lot of people running across the bridges. I remember seeing those shots of the Manhattan Bridge, Brooklyn Bridge, being completely covered with just people walking and going across and just going away. Didn't matter where, just away.
Correct.
Well, Ira, you're going to be speaking, there's some riveting information there you're just talking about. You're going to be speaking with one of the speakers on Saturday, the 11th, coming up for a memorial, along with Brigadier General Jonathan Maddox. So it should be a very interesting day indeed, and we'll be glad to see you there.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, I would like to thank you for being on the show today, and again, we'll see you on Saturday. Once again, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we've been speaking to Ira Polk. He is the director of the Clearing Corporation Foundation and Ice Clear USA. He also was in the building across the street. We were just talking about that from the World Trade Center during 9/11 events, and he will be speaking at the 9/11 memorial event. Once again, the information on that, it comes up this Saturday, actually on September 11th at 3 o'clock, right there at the center of the campus where the monument is. So come on up and remember with us, as everyone should never forget. Well, you've been listening to College Hill Perspectives. I'm Tony Selimo, and we'll see you again next week, folks.